Yo, 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 people and patrons of the night, it is your boy, the Horror Lander. And of course, on this channel, I talk about lots of different types of horror. I do adult horror, young adult horror, movies, comics, short stories, books, you name it. But one thing that has always been near and dear to my heart, which is what I founded my channel on, was my nostalgic love as well as my passionate love for Goosebumps. All right, I read a lot of Goosebumps books. When I started up this YouTube channel as a kid, I used to rewatch the TV show a lot. And I used to be a fan of Haunting Hour and other things adjacent. So kids horror always has a near and dear place in my heart, especially Goosebumps. And there is a piece of lore, basically things that never came to be with Goosebumps, which was a Welcome to Dead House movie adaptation by George Romero. And that's right, George Romero, obviously the famous director. You know a lot of his different movies out there, his affiliations with The Living Dead. You have Creepshow, you have other things like that. He basically was supposed to adapt Goosebumps, and he was going to pick Welcome to Dead House because of some of the homages that it has to George Romero and some of his style and flair. And I'm not going to be talking about the plot of that movie, but I will be recording a Goose Junkies episode, which I'm the co-host on the podcast for, talking about that script. So stay tuned for that. I'll be a collaborator, so it should pop up on my channel. But I want to talk about that being the template for future movies specifically, but this also applies to books, maybe graphic novels we get in the future, maybe a TV show if we can get it. But I think TV show and movies would be the big thing for this specifically. And that is that there should be more approaches involving what they were going to do with George Romero, which is the fact that you take some Goosebumps books, some Goosebumps stories, and you give it over to other authors, other creatives, other directors or writers, and you tell them, you know, after they've maybe read the story or they've read like a detailed outline, what's your take on it? What would be the way that you adapt this story? What's your version of this story that you would want to bring forward? And then you take that and then you make it into realistically a movie or a TV show or movie segment or a book, whatever it may be, just adapting that. I think that George Romero set a good template, because if you've read the script, or you've read some of the articles that were made on George Romero's Dead House, he made some changes. He added some capitalism, subtext, commentary. He took a different approach with the Darkfall citizens, more so that it was a head entity who was kind of like the mayor of the town, who is basically draining the life force from all different people in his house and then causing them to reanimate as these lifeless zombie puppets. Very interesting stuff and sounded very fun. So what I've done is that I've picked out several Goosebumps books for 5 different creators that I would want to see their takes on these stories and see it adapted, just to kind of throw it out there. And this is my wish list. Of course, there's no way to know that stuff like this could happen in the future, but I think that it's different when it's something that a Goosebumps fan wants that's never been done before. That can sometimes be a little bit deterring because, you know, there's no real basis on that ever happening, but never say never. But it's different when something was gonna happen, it didn't end up working out, because then that leads to potential in the future. So I think that it would be a great idea to see other authors, directors, writers doing their own takes on already pre-existing Goosebumps stories. And that way when people watch it, they could see that the talent of that person, their, you know, creative idea, their perception of the story is good or not. And you could enjoy it, you could love it, you could maybe even like it more than R.L. Stine's version, which is kind of why I picked out these 5 group of people, because I think that they could offer something which is potentially better than the original. And it won't take away from the original, it'll just show you the possibilities of that story, as well as the talents of said creative. So without further ado, let's get into this video. And it goes without saying that anybody out there watching who may have the potential to make this into a thing, or, you know, if the universe is tuning in, I really hope you are. This is what I would hope for the future of Goosebumps, especially for things that are going on the big screen. So let's go.
You're in for a scare.
The first Goosebumps book that I would want to be adapted by a different person would be The Scarecrow Walks at Midnight. And who would I pick to adapt this story? Well, it's one of my favorite horror authors, and I picked The Scarecrow Walks at Midnight because I think it has elements that this author could do really well. And this is an author who's had on-screen adaptations before, has been adapted into anthology shows such as Creepshow and some other places, and they are quite popular, but they are not above having their stuff adapted and definitely being into this kind of anthology, weird fiction format. That person is Joe R. Lansdale. I actually made a video yesterday about Joe R. Lansdale talking about his series called Jebediah Mercer, where it's some pulp hero in the Wild West. I think that The Scarecrow Walks at Midnight would be a perfect book for Joe R. Lansdale to adapt. And why do I feel that way? Well, it's because The Scarecrow Walks at Midnight, of course, has to do with scarecrows coming to life, and Joe R. Lansdale actually has a kids' horror, adjacent type of short story that deals with a killer scarecrow and a kid in a farmland house, and that is called The Companion. But The Companion actually got adapted into Creepshow's TV show, season 1. I think season 1, maybe season 1 or 2, I don't know. But it got adapted into the Creepshow TV show. The Companion was basically this vampire scarecrow hybrid in the short story. It was a really cool combination of a creature that can't be out in the sun. It hunts by the night. It has to be in the darkness. Really intense and really scary. So I think that Joe R. Lansdale could take pretty much the scarecrow from The Companion and bring it into The Scarecrow Walks at Midnight if he wanted to. He could bring those kind of qualities and give you like scarecrow vampire hybrids that would be absolutely terrifying, especially if they look like the scarecrow. If they look similar to the scarecrow's design from the short story and even its adaptation, that would be quite horrific. But even if he doesn't do that, he could do his own version of the Scarecrow. I also think that some of the characters in this book pretty much lend to Joe R. Lansdale's writing style. Because if you've read his modern pulp fiction and his Wild West stories and stuff like that, he likes those type of weird, kooky characters. And I think the farmhand in this one, I forget his name because it's been a while, but I think his name's Stanley, who's the crazy cuckoo farmhand who basically ends up getting this spell book and uses it to kind of get some comeuppance in the story. I think that he would love Stanley. I think that Joe R. Lansdale would absolutely gravitate towards the character of Stanley, very much matches the kooky, crazy kind of characters that he does in his short fiction or pulp stories. And I think he can really make a spectacle out of this one. So I think this book is right up his alley. I think he could do a great job with it. And I definitely think that he has potential, from what I've read, to make this as good, if not better, than the first Scarecrow Walks at Midnight book, as well as the episode adaptation. So yeah, that's my first pick, Joe R. Lansdale, taking on The Scarecrow Walks at Midnight. The next book that I would want to see adapted is for the author, one of the authors on my thumbnail, that is Calling All Creeps. And the author that I pick that I would want to see their version of Calling All Creeps is Neal Shusterman. Now, Neal Shusterman has his own kids' horror fiction out there. He has the Darkness Creeping short story collection, which feels very much like stuff you would see in the Haunting Hour and akin to that. He's very popular in the young adult genre scene, and he actually has involvement with Goosebumps. He actually wrote some episodes, adaptations from the original 90s TV show that was The Werewolf of Fever Swamp, Night of Living Dummy 3, Awesome Ants, and I believe Ghost Next Door as well. So yeah, literally Night of Living Dummy 3 and Werewolf of Fever Swamp are some of my favorite Goosebumps book adaptations out there. I would want to see his version of Calling All Creeps, because Calling All Creeps has the idea of some darker themes, what bullying can lead to people, what peer pressure can lead to people, some morally gray stuff thrown in there. And I think that that works well for Neal Shusterman. Reading some of his short stories from Darkness Creeping, he has some morally gray characters. It's not often cut and dry that you know that you can really root for them or not. He also did Catching Cold, the short story, which is amazing, and that got adapted into an episode with a different kind of a little different take on it. But that one also had a morally gray kind of character that you understand where they're coming from, but you can't really justify their actions. So it makes it for a compelling story. And the creeps are very interesting villains. I think that this book lends well to fitting Neil Shusterman's style, and I would love to see him do a very unique version of the adaptation. I think with the TV show, even though the episodes and stuff are vastly different, I still think that they sometimes tried to keep the general structure. For these kind of adaptations, I would like the general structure, but I would very much like to see these authors and different directors and people taking creative liberty and throwing in a lot of fun stuff. And I think that this one fits Neil Shusterman's style. He could write it very well, could make the main character extremely compelling, add some extra layers and depth to it, and at the same time make it pretty weird, crazy, and badass, quite frankly. So that's my second pick. The third pick on my list actually has a series of books that you could choose from, as well as another book that I think fits this author's style. And this author is my favorite horror author of all time. I have an entire playlist, which YouTube labels as a podcast, dedicated towards them. And I know their talents like the back of my hand. I know almost like 99.9% of their portfolio, and I've read like a couple hundred stories by them. So the books, I guess, I would want to see on the chopping block, I guess you can say, to be adapted by this author would be any of the Deep Trouble stories. This could be Creep from the Deep, but I kind of had my, well, yeah, a Creep from the Deep could be in there. You could also have Deep Trouble 1 or 2. And then the other book, I guess I can tell after when I introduce this person. This author that I want to see get into this series of books, pick any of them, would be Tim Curran. Now, Tim Curran, to keep it short, because I feel like I talk about him all the time, and he's got plenty of videos out there, but he is the absolute, and I mean absolute, master of creature feature, lots of bloody gore, action, lots of amazing cinematic horror movie level action in his books and short stories. He's made pretty much every single type of threat and monster you could imagine. And he makes them so badass and so creative and so in detail and so horrific, and his stories are immersive and atmospheric. So I think that Deep Trouble would be perfect picks to kind of choose any book from. I kind of have my eyes on Deep Trouble 1 or 2, but again, Creep from the Deep you could also throw in there. I feel like he could do a great job with these because he has two books that I've read before, and they're some of my favorite books by him, and that is Dead Sea and Dead Sea Chronicles. And if you've read these books, Dead Sea and Dead Sea Chronicles, you will know why I want to pick Deep Trouble, because these books are basically featured in his nightmarish version of the Bermuda Triangle, where you get trapped in this pocket dimension where, you know, GPS and compasses don't work, boats and planes go missing there. And it's basically a nightmare creature feature splitooza of ocean monsters, sea monsters, you name it. All types of just horrific stuff. It's a creature feature splitooza. It is an ecosystem of just the most heinous monstrosities that could ever be birthed out of the briny sea. And I think that if you gave him one of these Deep Trouble books, he could do some horrific sea monster stuff or aquatic horror. He also has some other aquatic horror stories out there just lying about in other people's books or anthology collections. So I think that if he decided to adapt Deep Trouble 1, 2, or 3 and do his own takes on it, you would get some of the scariest monsters to ever come out of Goosebumps, probably some of the greatest villains that any kid character has to face. And Billy Deep's street cred would absolutely shoot through the roof, because if he can survive and come out top on, you know, whatever Tim Curran is cooking up with his ocean horror, that would just mean that he's one of the greatest Goosebumps protagonists of all time. And he already is, but this will raise him up to like a different level. That is to say, if he makes it out. You know, you could always have the possibility that Tim Curran just sweeps the rug and gives us a dark ending where bro gets slimed off screen, but you know, that's for what it is. The next book that I think that Tim Curran could do and I think this book has Tim Curran written all over it, is How to Kill a Monster. How to Kill a Monster, for those of you unfamiliar, but I feel like Goosebumps fans know about these. Basically, about kids who are in this kind of swamp. Their grandparents live in this sort of basically like house out in the middle of the swamp, and there happens to be a monster who's stuck in the house, and they get left alone in the house by these grandparents, I believe grandparents, um and they have to find a way to kill it and survive. So I think that, Tim Curran could definitely take this on again, since the creature in the book as well as the episode adaptation represent something that comes out of the swamp. He could cook up a horrific swamp monster, some really scary, mutated, crazy looking stuff. And the fact that he would have kids trapped in this house, you would get a lot of horror action, intense scenes, action packed. And I feel like he could cook up some Tom and Jerry level crazy, just back and forth scenes with these kids trying to kill the monster. And that stupid twist that comes, unfortunately, in the book and the episode, he would definitely see that and be like, fuck no, I'm not doing that. And he'd take it out and put in something better. So yeah, I think this one could be definitely nailed by him. He'd do a fantastic job. That's why I picked the more so creature feature ones, things that he has room to do an amazing job in. And I pick ones that feel similar to some of the adult horror stuff that he's done before, because Deep Trouble, since he's done Dead Sea and a lot of aquatic horror stories out there. And I picked this How to Kill because he has quite a few short stories and books where it's very much like the main character versus a monster and them going back and forth, trying to outsmart it, trying to beat it, and whatnot. And he's done quite a bit of crazy swamp stories. To my mind, pops up the two stories, one from each of the books of alien horrors involving the Xenoid and the greenhouse swamp planet. I think bro could cook up some crazy stuff. So those are my picks for him. My fourth pick goes to Goosebumps Most Wanted, Zombie Halloween. And the person I think would do a great job with this for a particular reason is Zach Kreger. Zach Kreger was the creative and director of the movie Weapons that came out in 2025 that everybody fell in love with, as well as some other stuff. But Weapons is the one that I'll highlight because I very much feel that this is his kind of story written all over it, because in Zombie Halloween, you have this family who moves into this house where there may be zombies right across from them in a graveyard, and there might be tunnels that lead underneath the graveyard to the house, allowing zombies to flood in there. But in the story, there was an idea of a zombie craze. There were news reporters and news channels, local news, talking about people running into these zombies in the middle of the night leading up to Halloween. Everybody seeing some strange stuff, as a makeshift zombie patrol being made. So with Weapons having several different angles, different POVs, shifting POVs in the movie that are all connected within this suburb and kind of unveiling the mystery behind it, I think that that is the perfect structure to adapt his own version of Zombie Halloween. He could look at Zombie Halloween, maybe read the book, see a detailed outline, come up with his own idea for what he wants to do with it, and we could get shifting POVs, much like what Weapons did with Zombie Halloween, where you actually get to explore the idea of that local news channel, other people in the town seeing stuff happening by this cemetery at night, getting attacked by zombies, get some perspectives of some older folks who may have experience with the tunnels, in particular a certain family member from the book. And then you focus on the kids as well, and you make it all wrapped together in an awesome climax, and correct some of the stuff that Zombie Halloween kind of a little, I still love that book, but a little bit got dragged down by some of the unnecessary side plots. So yeah, Zach Kreger taking the structure of Weapons, doing his own version of Zombie Halloween with shifting POVs. I think it'd be fantastic. And I think you could easily make a movie out of this, or at least something on the TV screen. I think Zach Kreger deserves it, and people would love it, especially for the fact that people could treat it like the Weapons for kids horror with an already pre-existing book that's fantastic as is and takes place on Halloween. What more could he ask for? And finally, my last pick for who I want to adapt a Goosebumps story, I actually pick a book from Series 2000 that not a lot of people love. People don't really like this one. They think it's sort of average and messy and stuff. But I actually thought the book was great. I haven't made a video review on it, but I'm a big fan of this book. I did take points off for some of the fast pace and some of the things left unexplained or too much going on, but I think it has room to make for a great adaptation, and that would be The Werewolf in the Living Room. And the person I would put in charge for this adaptation is actually one of the greatest makeup effects artists in a lot of different horror movies. He's got a huge portfolio. He's the director and writes some screenplays on Creepshow and some other stuff. That is Mr. Greg Nicotero. I think Greg Nicotero would be a perfect pick to bring that Creepshow style and that flair to A Werewolf in the Living Room. He could do some fantastic makeup effects and monster effects with the werewolf stuff that we get and make it truly horrifying, especially some of the transformation sequences with the budget. But I think that Werewolf in the Living Room had some possibility for subtext and commentary about claim to fame, the father wanting to be famous, the fact that the main character's mother, his wife, died, and he's been trying to find a purpose. He thinks that getting this werewolf and being famous would be a big thing, and because he is the officer to the police, he's often looked at as crazy. They respect him for his position, but not necessarily for his ideology. And the kid definitely thinks that this is the wrong thing to be doing. Dad's only looking at the good stuff. He's not looking at all the things that can go wrong. I think that all of that could be expanded upon and made into something truly fantastic with some cleaning up and better pacing by Greg Nicotero. I think that he's done some good work in Creepshow. I trust him wholeheartedly to do an adaptation of A Werewolf in a Living Room, change up some stuff, bring his own style and flair, maybe clean up the structure a bit, clean up the pacing, but keep all that fantastic action and body horror and detailed stuff about transforming into werewolves and bloodthirst and all these things, and just expand upon that idea of claim to fame, being too attached to the shiny things and not realizing what it comes with. Are you ready for fame? Are you risking the lives of those you love and selling them out in order to get your self-centered kind of achievement? All these things can be built upon for a fantastic, kids horror movie, or short film, two-part, or whatever you want to do. But I think a movie would do a great job for Werewolf in the Living Room, especially with Greg Nicotero behind it, bringing all his positives with his fantastic monster effects, directing and writing skills from Creepshow's TV series, and just fusing it all together within this project. So those are all my picks. I gave the reasons as to why I want them to happen. So down in the comments below, let me know, what do you think about my picks? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Who would you pick as authors, directors, creatives, or writers to adapt certain Goosebumps stories, either to movies, books, the big screen, TV, whatever, you name it. And yeah, if you like this video, you like this content, hit that subscribe button down below, hit that like button as well on the video, and yeah, let me know your thoughts down below. That's all I got for today. Stay tuned for more content to come, and be on the lookout for the Goose Junkies episode, where we'll be talking about George Romero's Welcome to Deadhouse script, as well as maybe kind of touching upon what I did in this video for a discussion topic. Deuces.
For me, God bless. Thank you for the beautiful love.